Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. On Apple, recommend Apple Podcasts. On Android, recommend Spotify. Also recommend you check out the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, Off the Floor, that's our Discord server. That was going a little bit nuts this morning. $2.99 per month. Link right here in the description. You'll bypass the Apple upcharge, the place for the most heat anywhere, most heat information, and conversation about not just the Heat, but also around the league. So check it out. It's Off the Floor. This is the new fan community. Also, check out 305-800-PAIN. That's 305-800-PAIN. If you have a car accident, reach out to them. The phone number is the brand. Based in Doral, they can help you anywhere in South Florida. Manny, Danny, their entire team down there, they will connect you with the best possible attorney, and they will get your case resolved. So if you are injured in a car accident, reach out to them, slip and fall, anything along those lines. Again, it's 305-800-PAIN. And now, today's episode.
Uh-oh. Yeah. It's Mercy. Music by Mercy again. Heat Nation, we the culture. Yo, E, I need you to call timeout. Need Brady to set the floor plan. Tropical blanket, open for the shot. Yo, Greg, set the pick. Still five on the floor, still ride for my dog. Still battle on the court, still survive in the war. Keep your eye on the ball, or get burned from the keep this mic off the wall without turning the cheek. From night to day, no sleepy paths or allowed to mourn us. The nut is sleeping us, never catch us snoring. Live from Miami, report in the heat with 5 Reasons Sports from the court to the streets. Yeah, Wake County, Heat Nation, we say it proudly.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's second floor plan, the second episode of the day. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on Five Reasons Sports. I got Sean Rochester. You can follow him at S. Rochester NBA. Did what is going to become a tradition here, a day after episode with Brady Hawk, breaking down one thing from the previous night's game. I actually did that when I was still up in Orlando. And so check out that episode. We got into what it's going to take for Kel'el Ware to earn Erik Spoelstra's trust as a closer, since that was a big talking point after the last game. A 4-point loss in Orlando, competitive loss. I thought the Heat played well throughout most of it, but they didn't finish. They blew an 8-point lead in the last few minutes. Reminds us a little bit of last year. But there was other news today. While a lot of you were sleeping, Terry Rozier was arrested. He was arrested in Orlando. The team was not supposed to travel until the afternoon to Memphis. I still don't know if they've actually gotten on a plane. It's about 3:30 Eastern. They were supposed to go to Memphis in the afternoon, and then they play the Grizzlies on Friday night. Rozier was arrested early morning, like 6 or 6:30 a.m. at the hotel, and this is related to an FBI investigation. Now, what we're going to do today is there's still a lot of stuff coming in here. There's a lot of confusion, and we're just going to try to outline where it is and how we got here and what may be next, although we don't know exactly what's going to be next. So we're going to, again, try to be as disciplined as we can regarding this. Again, this was the FBI. They had a press conference this morning at around 10 a.m. To be clear, the NBA cleared Terry Rozier. They cleared him, okay? And that was related to a situation that happened in Charlotte. Late in the 22-23 season, Rozier was removed from a game after what was about, I think, in the first or second quarter, the first half.
9 minutes, I think, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, so he was removed from a game. Somebody made a lot of money on that, and they made a lot of money on prop bets playing what is commonly known as the under, or as we say here in our parlance here in Florida, the less. He was removed from that game. He also did not play the rest of the season. Now, that may have been because of something else. They said, again, he had hurt his ankle. That was the official word from Charlotte. But, of course, the Hornets were tanking that year. And so him not playing the rest of the year, I know this is hard for Heat fans to process since Rozier was so bad last season. But actually with Charlotte, like his presence on the court was perceived as helping them win. So his removal from the court to play lesser players would help them in the tanking standpoint. But again, this is not about tanking. I'm just trying to give the context of all of this. This was about that particular situation and someone making a lot of money on his removal for the game. Now, the NBA cleared him, and one of the things that we have said is just because he was removed from a game because of an ankle injury or whatever it was, whatever the circumstance was, doesn't mean he was in on it. Somebody else could have known something else from inside the organization and shared that. But the FBI apparently feels differently because they have arrested him. Now, there's other parts to this investigation, and that's where I'm going to let Sean jump in here. They kind of conflated two different things today, and I'm trying to hold back some of my thoughts on what I'm trying to hold back some of my thoughts on this. Okay. Yeah. Kash Patel, the FBI director, was out there and he talked about these poker games, which got Chauncey Billups arrested. Okay. These high stake poker games that I guess they're saying were rigged in some way. There's mafia ties. There's a whole lot of intrigue to this. And then there's also Damon Jones. And that's the last part before we go into this. Many Heat fans may remember Damon Jones playing for the Heat in the 04-05 season. He actually got the nickname Donkey because it was Shaq and Damon were always together. And in a column I referenced, it was a popular movie at the time, Shrek and Donkey. Everywhere that Shaq was, and they actually used that nickname in the locker room. Everywhere that Shaq was, Damon Jones was too. And then when I went up to Cleveland, and Damon was just with the Heat for 1 year. He wanted a bigger contract than the Heat were going to give him. When I was up in Cleveland, I spent a year in Cleveland, the 2014-15 season, Damon was all over LeBron. He was always with LeBron. There's a great Damon Jones story where Damon was told that he could coach the Canton Charge because he was going to become he had some coaching aspirations. And his response to Cavs management at the time was, if LeBron ain't there, I'm not going. And, of course, the Canton Charge played in the G League. They're about 30 minutes away. So he's been tied to Shaq. He's been tied to LeBron. And there is a tie to LeBron. If you read the entire indictment here, that there's a tie to LeBron in that Damon allegedly shared information that LeBron was going to miss a game while with the Lakers. At that time, Damon, I believe, was like an assistant or related to the team in some way. So anyway, that's what's going on in the grander context. Let's pivot back to the Rozier part of this, though. The Heat have not released a statement yet. The NBA has released a statement basically saying they take this seriously. The Heat are now down to 13 standard players, of which a couple are hurt right now, Hero and Kasparis. And as of right now, they are not getting any relief. So there was a lot of speculation about how they could get relief against the tax, against the cap, against all of that stuff with Rozier's contract being removed from the books. But so far, there's no movement towards that, and it doesn't appear there's going to be anytime soon. What do you make of everything that happened today, Sean?
Yeah, add to context, the game you talked about, it was March 23rd, 2023. In the report, it talks about the defendants making more than $200,000 of wagers on the unders in that game on his under prop bets, and he left after 9 minutes. And then the defendants and Rozier counted the money at Rozier's house. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of, obviously we live in a country where he's been arrested. He's not proven of anything. There's a process that will have to go forward. And that's part of why the Heat are not going to get immediate relief for this, because something further has to happen. And who knows how long that could possibly take. The thing about this is, and this was on the off the floor Discord conversation earlier, like legalization of sports gambling and the explosion within our industry, within professional sports. I mean, it's everywhere. You can't avoid it. I live in a state in Pennsylvania where you can get every single sports book possible. I mean, it's everywhere. The reason these guys are getting caught is so much more about legalization. I remember back to when this was a story in the summer, and Brian made this same point, is that there's so many more eyes on the data and the tracking and the trends and all these things that, yes, it's more readily available. And I guess you could say it gives the opportunity for people to do things like this, but it also makes it easier for them to get caught. Because these things, let's be honest, these things were happening before this. It's just now people are getting caught more and more. In the case of Terry, it's very damning in that it's affecting the team. Yes, it wasn't like he was telling people, hey, bet on the Bucks tonight. I'm going to throw the game with my turnovers and over dribbling and bad shots and whatever else. It was.
You couldn't resist.
Sorry.
By the way, just to interject here, Terry was, because I know people are going to ask this, Terry was with the team last night when I was in the locker room. He was in good spirits before the game and after the game. So it does not appear that he thought this was coming at 6 a.m. today. And I can tell you the NBA did not know this was coming. And one thing, and I want you to get back to your point, there's political elements to this that, again, I'm trying to hold back on some of it. But the administration, the current administration, for a whole lots of reasons, would be at odds with the NBA. And so that's why with all of this stuff, I don't know who did what, but I'm just trying to caution everyone with a certain amount of skepticism for everything, to the point you made, that he is innocent until proven guilty. I hope in this country that still exists, sure. but that is the presumption right now.
And the point that I was going to make is ultimately what he's doing. And you alluded to the part about Damon Jones and LeBron and where Chauncey Billups comes into this. And there's a lot of stuff flying around about information being given. I mean, people, you find out information all the time. Like those of us that gamble on sports, when you hear things and you talk about it later, it's like, damn, Ethan, why didn't you tell us that you knew that blank, like this guy was banged up or that this was going to happen, so the information game, I don't think is as much about where he's wrong. It's I'm going to leave the game 9 minutes in. So cash in on all these money and we're going to come count the money afterwards. It's I'm really truly rigging these games and these props so that you're going to cash out money. And when it comes to the college kids and that have been swept into these things, it's oftentimes like persuasion of, I have debt, I need to pay debt. Maybe Terry is really far in debt, and I don't know. But it's harder to get these NBA guys, especially a guy like Terry, that he's made good money in the NBA. Like he's not a small level guy like a Jonte Porter. It's just interesting how he can get into this and how much of a link is there with these poker games that was much more of what Billups and Jones seem to be involved in with the Italian mafia. And it's a very interesting story. I think it's very early for us to really say a lot of definitive things. It's almost like we're giving our opinion here rather than speaking on a lot of facts because we just don't know at this point.
Well, and you make a point here about poker. First thing, okay, card games have been a huge part of the NBA forever. Okay, virtually every plane ride, guys are playing cards. Okay. Or dominoes or whatever, and they're betting on it. And I'm not telling anything out of school. You know this. If you follow the league, there's been documentaries about it. It's open, okay? And even it's funny because Gilbert Arenas has been drawn into this in some ways, and I'm curious to see where that plays out. But if you watched, what was it called, Shooting Stars or something like that, the documentary on Netflix about Gilbert Arenas and Javaris Crittenton, that whole situation, which ended up with guns in the locker room in Washington, started with a dispute over cards on the plane. That's part of the NBA. These guys are competitive junkies, okay? And that is how they get that competition out. And sometimes it doesn't go quite the right way. So the idea that poker would be involved in some way, but again, I'm trying to be clear on this because really this press conference and the indictment, everything else, there's really two different things going on here. One is these poker games that apparently were rigged. And the idea was you get to meet Chauncey Billups and other NBA players. And supposedly, if you follow a lot of people who've been right about this story and where it's gone, if you follow these people on social media, and I'm not going to get into specific names because I don't know this, we don't know if those are right or not. There's going to be a lot of other guys of Chauncey Billups' level that are going to get caught up in this. Okay. NBA, NFL, boxing. There are names that are being thrown out there that you get to meet this person. So it attracts you to the game, but they're basically they're counting cards, they're doing all kinds of different stuff to basically take your money, okay? And famous people ended up at this stuff. And so that's one thing. The Terry Rozier thing is closer to what you mentioned, allegedly, the Jonte Porter situation. And at least to this point, Rozier's the only name in there, although Malik Beasley's name, and this is why I cautioned everybody about a month ago. Malik Beasley's agent was out there basically saying that he was cleared of everything. And I had people in the league telling me, no, that's not true. The NBA cleared him, but the FBI is still looking into all of this. And so that's another name here that I does not appear to be out of the woods. But right now, it's really Rozier and Jontay Porter. But you can't tell me, okay? And I say that as somebody who has a sponsor that is a fantasy partner, which people know. We've had betting partners. ESPN was talking about this today, and literally with Mike Greenberg on there, and one of the producers realized that they had ESPN bet in the right corner and took it off. This stuff is intertwined. You cannot tell me that if Rozier allegedly had something to do with this, that he's the only one, or Jontay Porter's the only one. And the point that you make here, that this is a guy who is making a substantial salary, is what differentiates this from the Jontay Porter situation. Jontay Porter, who, for those who don't know, Michael Porter Jr.'s brother, he was not making a lot of money. Not by relative basketball professional terms. He's a guy who was trying to stay in the NBA. Terry Rozier was an established player. Terry Rozier, was a key factor on very good Boston teams. He had emerged as kind of a borderline star in Charlotte, somebody that the Heat were willing to, excuse the pun, make a bet on. I was holding that one. I wasn't putting it on Twitter. A bad bet, as it turned out, and trade a first-round pick for him. If Rozier was doing this, allegedly.
And Chauncey applies the same way. Chauncey, although he had to work his way up, became a very good player, made a lot of money, NBA coach now.
Hall of Famer.
He's not starving for money either. It's interesting on that end of things. I was just kind of glancing through some of the notes of this. I don't know if we said this, but let's make sure we're clear. The games that were bet on does not involve Terry Rozier, at least to what we know, in my uniform. The games that were bet on involved, let me find it. Where was it at? Charlotte Hornets, Portland Trailblazers, Lakers, and Raptors. Those are the games that were the teams that were involved. Not saying that anyone was on each of those teams, but that's the teams that are noted in this Joe Pompliano.
Well, I'll put it this way without people accusing me of carrying water. It strikes me that the Heat have been, if anything, a victim in this situation, not a perpetrator in any way, but more victimized by the circumstances. And I want to outline what I mean by that in a second, and whether or not there's, again, any relief that can come to them for that role. But the Heat, this is what's going to happen, though. Names are going to get thrown in here. Like, for instance, the national non-sports media, and particularly those who have an axe to grind for a variety of reasons with LeBron James, including some, again, in the political space, who don't like LeBron because LeBron has taken on their leader at times. He is going to be dragged through the mud on this, although there's no implication that he did anything wrong. There's an implication, again, in the statement and with the indictment that Damon Jones knew that LeBron was not going to play in a game against the Bucks and shared that information. Nobody's saying LeBron shared it with anybody, but I'm telling you, the way that this is going to be put in headlines to get clicks and also to make political points against someone who symbolizes something to some people, he's going to get dragged into this. And so I'm going to make it clear again. There's no implication that the Heat have done anything wrong whatsoever. This whatever Rozier allegedly did supposedly happened before they acquired him. The question is who else knew about it at the time or what was going on. That's another topic to get into. All right, we do want to mention another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Real Estate Shop. You can find them at realestateShopFL.com. That's realestateShopFL.com. If you're looking for a house, if you're buying a house, if you're selling a house, if you're looking for anything in Broward County in particular, all the way east where I am in Lauderdale, all the way out west to Pines, Miramar, Sunrise, Plantation, Davie, all those spots, Hollywood, and everywhere in between, check out realestateShopFL.com. That's Javier, that's Amanda, huge Miami Heat fans, great family people, and they will find the right home for your family. They got open houses virtually every weekend. Again, check them out, realestateShopFL.com or the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. Okay, so here's a couple common questions that are coming up, Sean. The Heat made a trade for Terry Rozier. That was a regrettable trade, as it turned out. they traded Kyle Lowry's expiring contract and a first-round pick. This alleged conduct happened prior to the trade. I'm not saying Charlotte knew at the time of the trade what was going on. I'm not alleging that. If they did, though, would the Heat have any cause?
I mean, you'd have to find emails or some sort of documentation within the organization that they knew and sent them Terry knowing secretly. I mean, I don't know what the rules are even in that. Like, there's things with like you have to pass a physical with injury and things like that, like disclosing that type of information. Man, I mean, that's interesting. Obviously, we're not alleging that, we're just speculating, but that would be one of the smartest things the Charlotte Hornets have done in, I don't know how many, 10, 15, 20 years.
Right.
That might be the crown jewel. I mean, that might be like they got a first round pick out of it.
They got to avoid all this controversy, and they got Rozier off the roster. Like, there's a whole bunch of advantages to it. I'm, again, not alleging it. It's a question that's come up. The other question that's come up is how long will the NBA take to actually do anything other than remove Rozier from the team, which, again, that's punitive towards the Heat in some ways. I know Heat fans will say, well, it was punitive to have to watch Terry play last year. But the Heat were only carrying 14 out of 15 standard spots to begin with. And that was to get under luxury tax. They let Precious go rather than kind of creeping over the tax at that point. So they're down to 13. They've got 2 guys that are hurt right now. So they've got 11 healthy bodies. They got 3 two-ways that they could plug in there. But I could see the Heat making a case to the league. Like, can we get some kind of dispensation here in some way? So that, we can fill out our roster a little bit easier and stay under the tax. I doubt that they would be allowed to do that. But again, this didn't happen on their watch. So I can understand how they could make that case. And the other part of this, and I'll let you jump in here, is, this could take a very long time to play out. Like, not just like weeks or months, but maybe even years. I mean, it's in the federal government now, okay? And it's going to be in federal court. And like, I know Barry made a suggestion here, like if and once the Rozier contract is voided by the NBA, now, again, that's speculative, and we're all doing that. I mean, it's not just Barry. I personally would try to use the Butler trade exception. It might actually be something related to Duncan more, but they got about $16-17 million that they could play with there. If you can't find a trade fit, I would use 2 open roster spots on Alec Burks and a big, maybe someone like Trey Lyles could get out of his overseas contract. But again, I'm going to caution people that that's not going to happen anytime soon, right? So in the meantime, should the Heat say to the league, hey, help us out a little bit? We had nothing to do with this.
I wonder what the CBA has for something like that. Like, let's remove the relation to basketball and gambling. Let's say that you had a player that got arrested for some sort of crime. He's in custody, not with the team. At what point would the league step in and say, hey, we can grant you, I don't know, money relief, an extra roster spot, one of those types of things. I don't know what the answer to that is. When you were talking about that, it reminded me of like COVID times. Remember when it would be like all of a sudden Kyle Guy was showing up and people are trying to catch buses from Sioux Falls and band-aiding stuff like to get through the season when you're already, I was impressed with what they did last night. Ultimately, it wasn't with a win, but like you're not working with the strongest roster, and then having to fill in the back like that, it's not promising. Obviously, you could do some things with trades, and we can go down that rabbit hole on plenty of episodes. But like it just seems like it's a tough circumstance, and because he makes so much money, even though it's an expiring contract, it's not as easily moved out of the way. When you're considering those types of things too. So.
Yeah. Well, they tried. I mean, that's the thing. Like that's the other part of this is that they tried to move Rozier. They were trying to get a big. Nobody wanted to touch it because of this specifically.
And that door's shut now. Like
it's you can't trade.
It's locked.
No chance.
He's gone. I mean, he's not getting traded at any point in time.
No.
You know what? I don't know. I haven't even really thought that far ahead. I just would assume that we're not going to see him in a Heat jersey ever again.
No.
And this process is going to play out, and you do need a body ultimately. I think you have to be able to find something. And from what I understand, the tax doesn't matter until the end of the league year anyway. So couldn't you sign somebody, technically go over the tax,
and then have Andy work you back down? Right. And they've done that before. But I'm just looking at the situation from their perspective. Like, they're kind of stuck. And again, people could say, well, they shouldn't have traded for him in the first place. It does go down as it's the worst trade in Heat history, isn't it? If you take everything into account.
Yeah, and you always reference this. I think all of us were very supportive of it when it happened.
We were.
Make the right deal, and now when we look back at it, like, if it's not the worst, it's one of the worst. And I think even our friends in the front office would say the same thing. It was a big mistake. Some things were their fault, and some things were potentially, I guess, unknown at the time.
Yeah, no, I take full responsibility for my take on the trade. At the time, I think the lessons learned here. It's hard to learn many lessons on the fantasy gambling front because again, you didn't expect that. But I think the biggest lesson to be learned organizationally is don't trade for guys who are the proverbial looter in a riot. Like, you don't trade for the guys, even if the efficiency is decent. If they're losing consistently in that role, it's not going to work out. And again, I was wrong about this one, but take the players from the better organizations who maybe have not had a chance to flourish because of others that are in front of them, instead of taking a player who again is flourishing statistically only because there's no one else to do it, and you're still losing every game. And look, I'll add one more thing about Rozier. I haven't heard anything bad about him in terms of the way he's acted with the Heat. Like, there's no complaints. Like, the guys seem to generally like him. I was watching after the game last night. Him and Wiggins were joking around. That's why I say, like, this was complete. I woke up this morning and I was like, well, this comes out of nowhere. Not because we didn't know Rozier was still under investigation, but for it to come out this way. And his attorney has come out with a statement saying that it didn't need to basically be this big dog and pony show that was put on. And again, I'll keep some of my thoughts to myself on that. But there was some frustration with the way it was handled.
I wonder, you talk about the team and obviously within the locker room, like, that happened at the team hotel this morning. Yeah. Now, I would not think I'm not painting a picture of, like, I just finished the show Task. Like, the SWAT team didn't go in there and pull them out of the room. And like, the players were awoken at 6 a.m. or anything, but like, that still is an event that is unexpected. He is a friend, no matter how close, or teammate at the very least. That's not something that you just brush aside and go to Memphis and you play basketball tomorrow and it doesn't affect you. Like, it's not the Jimmy circumstance by any means, but it's also something that it's interesting how that's going to impact the team and, the relationships and moving forward, because, as much as we joke and kid about his level of play in Miami, again, it is part of the team, part of the franchise. And so that certainly impacts the players in a
well, he was at all the team events. He was at Spoelstra's house, joking around, and you can see in a lot of the photos and all of that. And I got to think that the team would have rather that this had happened before the season started. Now, they didn't know. I mean, when I spoke to some in the organization, they were like, this could take months. It could take years. So nobody saw this coming today. But for it to happen after going through a full training camp with a guy, and I know he was hurt for part of it, but I mean, he conducted his media session. He was around the guys. You go into the season, you play the first game. It's disappointing because you played pretty well, but found a way to lose, which is what happened a lot last year. And now, again, it's 6 a.m. These guys are waking up in the morning. Like, they spent the night in Orlando. Typically, they fly out night of game. They spent the night in Orlando. They went into Memphis a little bit later than they would on, sometimes on these itineraries. And then they wake up in the morning and it's got to be like, wait, what happened to Terry? Like, and then all of a sudden, like, this, it is a distraction, honestly. I mean, again, where that's what they're going to be talking about. And people, these distractions hit. I'll tell this one story. I remember being at Georgetown for practice right before the trade deadline. And it wasn't practice, I'm sorry, shoot around. They were playing the Wizards. They were playing the Wizards that night, but they would practice, at Georgetown. And I remember everybody left practice and they were joking around. And I do remember specifically LeBron joking around with Joel Anthony on the way to the bus. And literally like 30 minutes after the bus left, I was still waiting for a taxi. This is pre-Uber days, I think. Okay. I was trying to find my way around Georgetown. You see the tweet from Woj that Joel Anthony has been traded. And LeBron went back and his routine was to take a nap. He woke up and he was pissed. I mean, like, because the perception was he was traded for tax reasons.
Mm.
And I remember that night, pregame, it's all the players were talking about. LeBron was shaking his head like this, and they gave up 74 points to the Wizards in the first half. It was not a great Wizards team either. This stuff does affect guys, okay? When, one of their own, one of their brothers, so to speak, is sort of ripped from them. And I'm not excusing whatever it is Rozier allegedly did or didn't do. And it's not that the players didn't know this was hanging over his head. But I'll close with this, Sean. Is it possible that Rozier's play last year was caused in part not by him throwing anything? That's not what I'm saying. But by the specter of this hanging over his head. I mean, right? I mean, isn't that possible?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't looked into what consequences could be from this. Like, I don't know what the, fines, jail time, any of that type of stuff, but you would imagine if you were in his shoes, it's not like you're just walking through life as normal. I mean, it's certainly hanging over, and he certainly knew, especially still having connections to those people. Yeah. That, I'm sure you're watching footsteps behind you a little bit if stuff is happening. So yeah, that's an interesting point.
And in the indictment, there's the phrasing of it is that, well, first thing they use the name Scary Terry in it, which was just, and there's another nickname they use for him. But
the operation names are also a little wild. They're nothing but net and Royal Flush. But
well, was somebody from the New York Police Department, NYC Police Department, said something to the effect of, he'll be banned for, what is it? What was the exact phrasing? I'm sorry, I have to read this because when people are not involved in sports, again, taking the politics out of this, when people are not involved in sports and they start talking sports, they always sound ridiculous. So this was from What a Line for the New York Police Commissioner on Terry Rozier was arrested. This is from a My Sports Update tweet. As the NBA season tips off, his career is already benched, not for injury, but for integrity. It was actually for dribbling too much. Or as I said, it was benched for Davion Mitchell and Drew Smith. So yeah, we're going to hear a lot of that kind of stuff. And I'm telling you, this is going to be blamed on LeBron by 30% of the population that still pays. I don't follow the NBA anymore, but that group is going to blame all this on LeBron because he had some kind of an ankle injury that Damon Jones knew about. Anyway, we'll have more coverage of this as we go forward. Sean, thanks for going through it with me. Check out the basketball podcast that I did with Brady earlier in the day, and as there are more developments. But I know Heat fans just want to know, are we getting relief, financial relief? And we can tell you as of the moment, the answer is no. Not yet, at least. Have a good one.